Hi everyone, it's Anne with Art on the Creek. Thanks for joining me today. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you are a subscriber or a repeat viewer, thanks for stopping in again, and I'm glad you're here too. I hope everyone enjoyed their holidays at the end of the year. It's always so fun to get a fresh start in January. A while ago, you may remember on my community tab, I had 4 photos to choose from for what we would paint next. And I think today is a great day to paint the lantern. That was the one that got the most votes. And for those of you who have participated, I really appreciate it. In the post, I think I called it a miner's lantern, but actually it's not. So I learned a few things. I'm embarrassed to admit that as a descendant of Colorado miners, I didn't know what it was, but it is very much a lantern, and it's definitely old. The picture that I posted is definitely a replica, but let's have some fun with it. We'll learn some Colorado history along the way and hopefully have a lot of fun painting this lantern. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Here's a photo of my great-grandpa and great-grandmother. This is Angelo, Anselmo, and Caterina. Their last name is Bellotti, and if you look on the map, you can see Bellotti Creek. That is the creek that comes from Art on the Creek. I will put a little clip up there so that you can see where that creek is. Unfortunately, it's not right close to my house, but it is where my family first settled in Colorado. They came over from Italy, from Emilia-Romagna, which is northern Italy, to settle and help work the coal mines in Colorado. It was the Paradise Mine, actually, up near Aspen. When you're mining underground, of course, there are a lot of gases that naturally come up from the earth, and there's no ventilation down there really to speak of. So the miners needed to be very careful about fumes, and a lot of these lamps were either kerosene or some other extremely flammable fuel. So that is why the Davies lantern was used. And you can see it's got, the way that it works is the air comes in the bottom and then the fumes go out the top, but it's more protected and it's less likely to explode. So that is a miner's lantern. The one we're using for our reference would be one that would be found more in the home. Enough history, enough memories. Let's get to painting. I am excited to say we're going to pull out this again. This is the Derwent Graphitint Paint Pan Pocket Set. So we're going to be using these paints today to capture some of that great rusty effects of the lantern. And then I also have my Sennelier set because, to be honest, it was the first one within reach. I have so many paints that I love so dearly, and I've just kind of been using this one a lot lately. So this is what we're going to use today. And ta-da! I am so excited to say this is the first day that I'm going to open my Arches travel journal. I'm so excited that they finally came up with one of these. Arches watercolor paper is a crowd favorite for sure by artists around the world. Let's see if I can get the plastic off of this. There we go. This is the first time I've tried this, but I'm not expecting any surprises. It's Arches cold pressed paper. And let's see what we can figure out. Okay, so let me move some of these things out of the way. We're not here yet. Let's start by drawing. I've got a straight edge here, and I'm just kind of doing a rough third of the way in. It's not quite actually a third, but it's close. That's going to be the edge of the wall. What that's enabling me to do is to help me decide where to place the lantern. Now I'm starting with the chimney and just kind of getting the dome there on top, and then the vents there, just getting the basic shape of it in, and then it's got that base piece on it. So I'm just kind of trying to make sure that I keep it centered and extend the sides evenly, and using that width of the chimney as my guide. And now I've got all of the top iron parts, and now I'm working on the glass. What you want to do, you notice I'm holding my pencil back further, letting the tip of the pencil rest on that knuckle, and I'm just letting my wrist really guide the pencil, and I'm making little short hash marks. Now when you're working on anything like this that you need to be symmetrical, it's a lot easier if you turn it upside down. for some reason your brain can see it better. And to be honest, I think it's also the arc of your hand has something to do with it. But it is easier to see something symmetrical if it's upside down. That way your brain looks at it kind of with fresh eyes. I'm making sure that that bottom of the glass there is even and just rounding it out a little bit. I've got my kneaded eraser. I'm so happy I found it again because it is my favorite tool to use when I'm erasing. It doesn't leave any erasure crumbs, and it keeps itself clean when you knead it like that. So it's really nice to have. One thing I have noticed though is that it can leave a slight oil deposit on some papers. So just a cautionary tale. I haven't noticed it on arches, but on some papers I've noticed that when I use the kneaded eraser, it kind of makes things a little difficult to stick. It forms a bit of a resist. That could have been an older eraser, but it has happened to me. Now we've got the base of the glass in, and I'm going to put that little tray that the wick kind of sits on there. And now we're coming down. Now here's something else you can do. You can draw a line, a vertical line there, so that you can have another guide to keep things equidistant from the center. It's just another tool you can use to help you draw and make things more even. And now I've got the base of, I guess this would be like the tank, the little pot where you fill the fuel. There's that first dome that comes up. And now we're working on the base of the lantern here. I've got this on double speed, but I think you guys can probably figure that out. I do like to mention that though, because somehow in this world of everything being sped up, I don't want to give anybody the impression that you can do this really quickly. This whole project took me probably an hour and a half. And I wanted to keep this real time for you guys because I don't really do real-time videos that often. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you prefer the real brief videos, or do you like these every once in a while to do a real-time video? I'm just kind of trying to get a feel for what you prefer, because that's why I'm here, is to impart my knowledge to you in the best way that you like to receive that information. So now I'm putting the side handles here on the lantern, and this is kind of turned towards us just a little on this right side. So I'm making it go into the base there a little bit toward the front. And then the handle on the left will be a little bit behind. So you'll see how we space those a little bit differently. The best advice I can give you when you're drawing is to keep referring to your reference photo. The link to the reference photo here is in the description, and I've got it on Dropbox. If for some reason you can't access that photo, let me know, and I will see if I can post it in a different way. And I can certainly message it to you over Instagram if you prefer. At any rate, you can see that that other handle on the left that we're drawing is closer to the belly of the glass, and that is to allow for the foreshortening of it. Now we're putting in the handle where it's hanging from the iron hook. And I do have the little attachment there on the right, but not on the left. You can't see that because it would be behind it. Now we kind of have to make this part up because there's a light bulb in there on our reference photo, but this is kind of where a flame would be. So I put in that little, it's kind of a wick holder device that's in the bottom, and then the flame comes out the top. I don't know if you're watching this, if you've ever worked with a kerosene lamp or lantern. Usually what happens is the fuel is in the base, and then the wick is cotton. It's a woven piece, and it goes down into that fuel, and it's absorbent, so it gets soaked with the fuel, and then you have the wick extend just a tiny bit up into that glass bulb there, and then you light it. Now with most lanterns back in the day, you would have a way to take that glass bulb off so that you could access the flame. This one, it's one of the reasons you can tell it's a reproduction. However, you would have to get in there to change the light bulb, so I don't really know how that's set up on this one. That will remain a mystery. Now we're just drawing in that wrought iron hook, and I'm making a little bracket for it to go into the wall, just because I wanted to do it that way. There is no other reason. Typically when I have a reference photo, I will change it up just a little bit, and this was no exception. I just made that bracket a little more interesting to me. Now I'm kind of erasing the majority of that line, and I'm putting in a rock wall. The rocks don't have to be anything in particular. I'm just kind of making rough, squarish shapes, which is about what you see. I'm not putting in the rocks exactly as they are. I'm just making them, in general, what a rock wall would look like. So if you don't want to create a photorealistic drawing, then you certainly don't have to. You can do like me and just kind of put the rocks wherever. You could make it a wooden wall, you could make it a brick wall. You could just omit that entirely and just do the lantern, whatever you prefer. But I really like painting rocks, so I decided to go ahead and draw these in. So let's use a decent brush here. I'm going to use this one. This is the Series 7 Winsor Newton Sable. Now, what I want to do first is get the undertones of the rust in. So I'm going to start with this color called Russet. It's kind of a yellow ochre color. And I didn't pre-wet these pans. They get wet again so easily that they're really a pleasure to use. All right, I'm going to go in first and just kind of put this all over. And then I'm going to come in over it with this autumn brown while that's still wet. I'm not going to put it everywhere, but definitely in some places. And then up here, for instance, I can start with the autumn brown. And I'll do that here too. Not really filling it all in, just kind of leaving some space, because what I'm going to end up doing is blending it with some others. Let's go in with this steel blue. Now, the cool thing about this lantern is that there's a lot of rust and things going on here. So you can really have some fun making it look however you want. Let me zoom in because that's really looking cool. So that's all I'm going to do there for now. And I'm going to take more of that autumn brown, and I think I'll go down this side piece here, leaving space right here because I don't want to, leaving space right in between there because I don't want to interrupt that yet. And these Graphitint paints are really great because they granulate so well. So for an effect like this with rust, it's really a great paint to use. Very simple, very cooperative. Let me zoom out just a touch here. Let's see, now I think I'm going to go in with that slate blue again. And while this is wet, I'm going to put a fine line of it all the way down this edge here. Just letting that seep in a little bit. And let's see, I'm going to zoom out some more so you can see the whole thing here. We'll do the same thing, not where it connects, but down here. And this one I'm making just a little bit thicker. Now that's dry enough, we can get down there. All right, now for that line that goes down the side there, I think I want to go into the graphite gray. Just kind of make that shadowed a little bit. Got a bit of a hard line right here. Let me see if I can pick that up. Go back in with that autumn brown. And get another line of that in there. All right, and that's all I want to do on that side for now. So now I'm going to turn it upside down and do the same thing to the other handle. Starting off with that autumn brown. And again, back into the steel blue. And in this case, the darkest line is going to be here on the inside. And I really like how that's just migrating out. It will add to our rusty effect that we're looking for. I'm also going to go in there with some of this yellow. Just to brighten that up a little. I'll do it over here as well. Even though this side is kind of dry, I'm still going to go ahead and add it in. I like that combination of the autumn brown and the russet to make rust. A little bit of the russet up here. Alrighty. Now that's looking really nice. I think I'm going to need, though, let's try this port. I want a fine line over here, but I don't want it to be too dark. So the port is kind of a wine shade, and I think that will pull up the red in the autumn brown without it being too overpowering. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted it to do. I zoom in so you can see here. I'm just taking this and kind of smoothing out the edge with the port. Just to kind of give it a shadow toward this back side. All right, now we'll do some more of the body. And let's see, oh, this has some fun greens on it. I'm gonna shy away from this disc for now because when I do the glass, I wanna make sure that that's just a certain way before I continue. So I'm gonna put this russet all through. To about here. I'm working in sections because I want it to stay a little bit damp. So because my climate is so dry here, I want to make sure that I have enough wetness in my paper to keep working. Now let's use some of that port. That was a fun one. All right, let's see here. I want to get in some of this slate green because it's a really cool color. It just really kind of looks like it's oxidized right in here. I want to go around here. And here. And it just kind of picked up all around here. Put some under here too. Let's go a little bit darker. Let's go in with that ocean blue right under here. And this time I'll put it down here as a base. We'll see how this works. Merge that with the russet. And go in with our autumn brown. That's kind of our main rust color. And I really like that blue. Let's try this dark indigo, just for grins. And let's see, I'm going to do the graphite gray around this knob here. And let's see, come in with some of this russet color, or excuse me, autumn brown. Kind of picking up some of that graphite gray. And then we'll put some russet in there too. All right, I think I need to make this a little bit longer over here. All right, that looks so cool, you guys. I hope you get a chance to try these graphitints because they're really fun on this. I think I'll work on the glass, and for that, I'm going to go into my Sennelier. Now, a lot of glass is done best with shadows and highlights, as are most things. So you can see I've got a really messy palette here. This is a really good gray. I was using it to mix the burnt sienna and ultramarine. Here's the burnt sienna, here's the ultramarine. And as you can see, the colors will separate, and that gives you really a neat texture for gray. So I'm just gonna get my palette wet. I like to leave a dirty palette because it allows me to do things like this. It allows me to remix some grays, and this here I can pull in some of this red so that we can pick up some of the colors that are in the reflection. So the darkest parts of our lantern are back here. I'm using kind of a dry brush technique so that we'll have some of that natural highlight there. This is a great rough, it's not fine texture. I shouldn't say it's rough because they do make a rough textured one, but this one, let me shadow up here, is really nice. For doing dry brush technique. All right, so there's our shadow, and then now I want to add just a little bit of cobalt blue into that gray. Here's what that looks like. So now I've got a gray that's really leaning more blue, and I'm going to do that one right here because this is the part where it is picking up the sky. I'm watering it down, making it a little less opaque. And we'll put some of that down in here. And that's all I'm going to do on the glass for now. What we can do though is the little holder part down here. It just went in with some of that autumn brown, and now I'm using graphite gray kind of along the bottom. Letting it cast a shadow down here. Punching up these shadows here and along here. Flame. Let's take some of this Sennelier. Let's use the Naples Yellow Deep. And that is this one right here. And I'm just going to make kind of a Y that comes up. And I don't want to make it perfectly even. It's a little touch in the center. And now with my brush really well rinsed and damp, I'm just going to add some water to that and kind of mix it up in with the glass. So I'm just kind of letting this create a glow. I've got a very light touch, just a wet brush. And if you wanted to, you could go in with just a touch more of that Naples yellow, because there will be a color shift when that dries. But what we can do right now is the base here. So let's start out with some of that russet. Now we're kind of making this up because this part is not like this in our reference. So this is just, use your imagination. But I'm just kind of making this another little rusty piece. But I am going in and adding some indigo because this would be more of a, I don't know, this part always seems to be darker. And then with some of that same autumn brown, kind of just go in here a little. And make the base. Let's add some graphite gray in there. I think steel blue works a little bit better. And that is the base of where we've got this lamp setting. And we can go in when we're all done with white highlighter, and I will, because we need to make that front ridge of the glass show up a little bit better. So this is looking really good so far. Let me zoom back out. Don't want to make you dizzy. And let's work top down now. I want to go in and do some of this same type of gray. I'm not going to use the Derwent for the rocks because I want this to be a little bit more, what's the word? I don't want it to have that graphite showing up. So let's mix some more of this gray. We've got the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna. All right. So I've got that. First thing I want to do is go in with just the sepia. So I'm going to make another pile over here that's mostly sepia. And sorry for all the moving around here. Let's do this rock. And this is where we're just going to go at random. I'm purposely trying to get that dry brush technique going. And I think I'll just paint through that because I can paint over it. Not doing every rock. kind of starting on the left of the rocks that I do, and just kind of trying to get that dry brush technique in there. Okay, another great color to use would be yellow ochre, and I don't have that in here, but what I do have is this jaune brilliant, and we're going to use some of that too. And mix that with some of the sepia. And again with the dry brush. Now the good part about, or the fun part I guess I should say, about doing a background like this is it does not have to be perfect because we want the focus to be on the lamp. I'm mixing in some rouge red with that jaune brilliant to kind of pick up some of the pink tone that's in some of these rocks. Now, the dry brush technique is a really great way to make rough rock texture. There's another way to do rocks where you scrape away, and I can show you a little bit on here because that probably would add to this if we do some of that scraping away. Just always kind of trying to be random yet cohesive. Does that make sense? Trying to get it to where the rocks definitely look like they're all basically the same, but that it's not a uniform pattern. I'm using Payne's gray now, and I'm mixing it in with everything on my palette over here. You can do neutral tint as well. Little shapes on the rocks. And then before I get too far, we're going to scrape in some highlights. So I've just got a palette knife and I'm just running it in different places to establish that shape of the rocks. And when you do this, in order for it to work, you do have to have slightly wet paint. Your paint needs to be slightly damp. So this will pick up some of the shape and texture of rocks. That one turned out really nice right there. And it's kind of just random. You just don't really know what you're getting. So this is just a fun thing to do. So let me just continue with these. And I will get a few of these going here. So I've got a few of that Payne's gray on there in places, and now I'm just going to scrape away, and I'm being totally random. This will create all of those facets and ridges that are in the rocks. And it will just make it look a little more interesting. And when you have these layers of colors like this, then it allows you to lift off in interesting ways. I have to get that one wet again. And I am not doing every rock in the same direction, trying to get different textures in there. Okay, so that I kind of think is really cool. Let me give this a shot with the heat tool and then we can go on. Okay, I think what I want to do first is put in that handle. And I'm going to go right into that autumn brown. But I'm going to mix it with just a little bit of the steel blue, just to kind of purple it up a little bit. Make it darker so that it shows up over these rocks. So here's my mix. I've got the autumn brown there and the steel blue. That's a little too dark. Let's add some more autumn brown. There we go. And let's see, we've got this is where this side connects right here. All right, there is our metal handle. And now I'm going to go in with a very liquid version, very, very thin version of this gray that's still on my palette over here. I'm just adding water to it because I need to put some mortar in between these bricks. Now here at the bottom, I am making the mortar just a little bit darker because there's a shadow. All right, I think that's a pretty good wall. Let's fix this rock here so that it looks a little more purposeful. Coming out with some graphite gray and port. A little bit of that russet. And some autumn brown. Make this rock stick out a little too. Give it a buddy. What the heck? We'll be generous. There, and then of course, don't forget you will need to go in and scrape again. Let me just take a double check about this, the mortar here, and make sure I've got all of these spaces covered the way I want them. And I think toward the back here, I'm going to want this just a little bit darker so that the candle can show up. The glass can show up just a little. Not too much darker, but just a little. All right, now before we go on, I'm going to dry that with the heat tool one more time. Okay, now for this background over here, I think I'm just going to do kind of a cobalt blue. And use that to pick up what's left on my palette over here. Got some in that section that looks pretty good. This over here, this is about what I really want, right there. All right, and I'm gonna hold my paper so that it's tilted and just kind of concentrate this pigment toward the top and then come in with some water. My brush isn't 100% clean, as you can see, which is okay. And I'll just add that pigment along the top and the edge of the building here. Went in that pure cobalt there that time. That might be a little brighter than I want. There we go. There, just gives it some interest without being anything in particular. I like that. I'm still holding it at an angle so that I can catch these drips here because I don't want a hard line down here. And cobalt blue is a good granulator for us. I don't know if you can see that, but right in there it's doing a nice job. All right, whoa, still draining down here. Let's go ahead and pick that up a little. Push that pigment back up. Okay, one more heat tool. All right, we're almost done here. This is going to be so neat. Let's get in here with some burnt sienna. Pretty thick burnt sienna is what I'm using. And I'm just kind of making this little portion where the the hook is mounted. And I'm going to go in with some Payne's Gray and just kind of blend that a little. My brush wet here. Kind of try and make that mount look a little bit weathered. Okay, and finally we're going to do the wrought iron that it's hanging from, and for this I like to use Payne's Gray. And a fairly thick mix on my brush. And I'm just going to go in and do one side of this. Kind of the underside. And then I'll get my brush wet and run that pigment. For the width of the hook. And if it's not pulling out the way you want it, which mine isn't, I'm just going to put a little more pigment on there. The idea is to make it look either curved or beveled, so that's why I didn't want to have just a straight line of iron, of the Payne's Gray. Okay, and I also did the outline of the little bracket that holds it. Let me zoom way in here so you can see what I'm doing. Got my brush wet, and I'm just pulling that pigment to the inside here, like so. Okay. And then I notice this is crooked here. So we can choke up on that a little. And on this side as well. Of course, I guess it would be kind of wonky because it is into rock. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not on a smooth surface. If you'll notice right here, the handle is kind of floating. So I do need to make that just a little bit thicker right here, so that the handle has an actual place to sit. There. Much better. And this is how you work them. This cleans them, it keeps them soft. When you get one, take the time to play with it a little so that it's nice and soft, and that way it will stay soft. But when you stretch it like this, it cleans it. So it's always a clean eraser, really nice. And what I'm gonna do is just roll it across here and pick up, you can rub it too, pick up some of that line from the glass. And as you know, this is just the one I prefer to use. There's tons out there. This is just the one that I like. And I'm gonna go in and do a little bit more on the glass for reflection. I'm gonna just come in, I want it a little thicker, and make these brightest highlights on the glass. And let's see, there's one that comes down here. And the one that really caught my eye is this one here that goes across the bottom, coming up just a little from the edge and getting that in there like so. So we've got that space. So what I need to do is get some more gray, very watery gray. And this time I'm mixing the cobalt with a little bit of Payne's Gray, because I do want it to be kind of a gray blue, and I've used those colors in this already. Extend that shadow over a little there. And this is the edge of the glass. It's kind of a broken line that I'm making. And we'll do the same thing on the other side, but very faint. Barely there. Because glass itself does make a shadow on itself. And now I'm going to go inside this white line here and kind of create those ridges that are there. Do the same thing along the back. And now I'm looking for any real dark shadows. I'm back in there with my blue. I'm gonna punch this up just a little. And then when that dries, we'll put some white on top of there again. I'll use a lot less water on this time. There we go. Now we've got some good highlights. I'm just gonna put one more down here. Okay. Now for the heat tool, I'm gonna use this same mixture I had before up here that I used for the handle. So that's gonna give us the right color. Let's add just a touch of this autumn to it. There we go. Now these, they're in the back and the front. So let's do the one in the front first. And you just kind of have to just go in there and do it. So it's going to come down, and what it's doing is it's coming around and going around the back. So we'll do that, and then on the back side, I'm just going to take some of this paint off my brush and make it a little bit broken and not going through the flame, because you wouldn't be able to see it through the flame. Okay, and now we'll do the same thing for the other one. And that one, you want to match about the height where it is, so right here, and you're going to come out again and come down like so. And once again, we're just going to go for it. All right, that's where it ended up. Take some of that paint off, and then we'll come down this side like so. Now to make the fronts darker, I've got more of this port, and we'll mix it with this graphite gray. And you only want to do this on the front piece. The back, we want to keep it faint because it's through the glass and behind the light. And I punched up that shadow there, but I kept it underneath because this is going to have some of the light on it from the flame. So now my brush is just damp, and I've wiped it off, and I've got just very little water on there and just pulling out those shadows that I just added in. One last thing that I'm not as pleased with is this right here. I'm going to add some ocean blue and just a little bit more of that autumn brown. Oh my goodness, friends. I think I really like this one. There you go. There is our lantern. And hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about my family and about Belody Creek, which is where we're doing our art on the creek. It's a creek that's in my heart, and I really value being able to share that with you. So thank you so much for joining me today. Here's our lantern. Let's go ahead and give it a signature. '23. That's going to take a while to get used to. All right. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you guys have fun painting the lantern. See you next time.